Welcome to everybody to our webinar today, which on learning to turn print into Braille. I'm Rebecca Clark, as I know some of you out there, and Trevor Boyd from our Melbourne office will be doing most of the presenting today. Without further ado, I will hand over to Trevor, and he can tell you all about going from print to Braille. So,
good afternoon, Trevor Boyd. I've been involved with Braille production and that sort of thing for quite a while, and I'm just going to talk about Braille production today. For quite a lot of years, Braille production's been handled by the gadgets that are on your screen, which is a good old Perkins. They've been around a very long time, and for many years, I think, very large amounts of Braille was simply done on your Perkins. Advantage was that it was simply done on the spot. It was pretty good quality. Drawback was that really you needed to have all the skills to know and be able to translate Braille to be able to use this device. Still used a lot these days, and there's a lot of aids out there and a lot of people translating and embossing, basically Brailing out material. For about 15 or longer years ago, there was a range of other devices came out in order to translate text into Braille, and one of those was a Mountbatten Braille. It was quite a new innovation in its time, and what the Mountbatten Braille did was it was an embosser just like a Perkins was. So you can see the 6 Braille keys there. People simply brailled away, and an embosser, an electronic embosser, produced Braille on the spot. It did have one big advantage though, in that inside it there was a small computer, and it was able to plug into a PC so that you could type your text up on the PC just using the general word processor and send it to the Mountbatten. You could type it up in text, so you could do all the nice stuff of grabbing stuff off a web page, or just typing it up, spell checking it, sending it off to the Mountbatten, and the Mountbatten would translate it and print it out or emboss it out in Braille. Since about 5 or 6 years ago, certainly in education, there was another program being used, and that was called Duxbury. DBT, Duxbury Braille Translator, is now used by all of the major producers out there of Braille, so all of the main educational side is generally using Duxbury as a Braille production or translator program. It's very easy to use, and you'll see in a minute why it's fairly popular. So in this case, we just open up a new document. In this case, it does quite a range of languages, but we're just picking the English UEB translation tables at the moment. And it starts off, and we can type into this. We can translate it, but also being a word processor, we could do things like go to the web, grab some text off the web, we copy that, go back, just paste it into our Duxbury translator. So there's our text. If we go Control-T, we can now translate that text, and the advantage with this in this particular method is that we can see the dots on the screen before we emboss them out. With the Mountbatten, for example, you could see the text as you typed it up, and you could emboss it out in Braille, but if there was an error or the Braille formatting wasn't quite what you wanted, then basically you'd have to emboss it out again. Duxbury's been around a long time, as I was saying, so it's the popular one. So if I wanted to emboss that now on an embosser that I've got connected to my PC or on a network, I'd simply go Control-T for translate and emboss that out. I'll be coming back to that a little bit later. So the biggest thing with once we had the translating under control was basically trying to get the text as to how do we manage text. Not all text is available off the internet, so how do we manage it? For example, if we have in a school situation, we have a handout, or we have a large PDF document or a PowerPoint, how do we actually convert the material from the printed material or whatever form it's in into something that we can paste into our Duxbury Braille translator. Main one of use for that one is called OpenBook. And OpenBook's a program that's been around for a very long time. We're up to OpenBook version 9. However, it goes right back, I think, pre-Windows they had OpenBooks. The main people, or the main use of it at the moment is that it's used with a Pearl camera. But in terms of the file for OpenBook, it was very straightforward. It's just a talking word processor. A lot of students have learned keyboarding on this because it speaks. It's by the same company that has written JAWS, so it's got a very friendly speech access, large prints access, but they've kept on expanding the way that this can access material. So the most popular way, and I'll show you a quick video on this one, and that is with a Pearl camera. Pearl camera is an add-on. It's something that you can purchase when you buy OpenBook, or it can be added on later if you already have it. And it folds up. That's it sitting on the desk. It's got a USB port, and so the design is, or the concept was, a fairly friendly portable gadget that anybody could use that was very tactile. It had locations so you knew where to put the material. It could fold out, and it's a digital camera on a stand. So the concept was that you could just fold this thing out, locate an A4 page, and it does slightly larger than A4, it's the American size, and it photographs anything or the text that's on a print page and then gives that image to OpenBook. OpenBook then converts it into, or recognises the text on the page, OCR process, and retypes the document. So it was very much a convenience tool. You can see the foot at the bottom. The foot at the bottom is basically an A4 size. That's the page size. You can see where the page fits there. It's very tactile, so it's just a matter of lining the paper up at the base of that foot. It's also very popular in the workplace because it just gives you immediate access to print material. That's the USB plug. It also can be used with a flatbed scanner, and it also can analyse images through a print process, which I'll show you in a minute. So basically, if OpenBook, where's my OpenBook? So this one here, I've just got a sheet of material in a printer, and I'm going to scan it at this stage. The bottom right hand in, I've just pressed the space bar. That's all you need to do. Bottom right's got acquiring there. So it's now switched on my scanner and is reading the material in. As soon as it's read the material in, so it's got the image and starts this OCR process, it'll then start processing. Basically, it works through, it recognises which way the page is up, and then starts to recognise, literally it recognises the shape of every character that's on the page. It's got a learning ability, so you'll find page 1 is the slowest, and as you go on successive pages, they just get quicker and quicker. So that's my image arriving now, and you can see it's highlighted, so it's actually audibly reading that out. I don't know how much you can hear, but it's the usual, that's Lee speaking, and it just simply, if you do nothing else, it will simply read out the entire text on the page. So with this one, now that we've actually got the text on the screen, I can switch it into edit mode, and in edit mode it's a talking word processor. So I can change this text around, I can remove or add paragraphs, and I can basically format this text. I can also view the exact image. This is what it actually scanned in. You can see there's a little bit of text bleed through from the other side of that sheet, other side of the page. But basically it's taken that text and analysed all of the actual letters and retyped the document. If I had lots more pages to do, it's just a matter of either with a Pearl camera putting those pages down and scanning them in. If not, I'm just going to change to a different, which is a little bit more complex, and you can see how it works.
Oh, oops.
So it's now scanning in a new page, and this has got some quite difficult text on it. It's some text over the background of a photo. And you can see then some of the limitations of the analysis of the OCR program. There's several other programs to do this. Another one is OmniPage. OmniPage is a commercial product out there which will do one section of this, which is analyse the text on a page. Doesn't have speech. Is a little bit more complex to operate as a graphical interface, but it's fairly effective. But one advantage I think of an OpenBook is that it has 3 installs, and it is designed for students to use it very easily and very effectively. So if you have a vision impaired student who may be using JAWS or Zoom Text, this is a very easy add-on, and it gives them direct and independent access to all sorts of print material. So I'll just stop that. You can see how it's up here, it's not analysed something correctly. And basically what you do is you switch it into split view. In fact, I'll give you the exact view of the whole document. So up the top here, this is a couple of images are up the top of the document, and obviously it's got facing the future, but in behind there is another photo, and so the letters are not clearly defined. So if I go to split view, I can actually, it links like the thing that it analysed and the text that it thought this was is linked, and so it's highlighted on the screen. So I click on that section there, like the 1, and it was actually at the top of the U in population, so it hasn't quite analysed the text properly. Also that bit up the top was something in the trees that it recognised. For the most part, it's it looks like it did fairly well. It just didn't quite analyse, and that's probably the most difficult thing for these types of programs to recognise, and that is where you've got text either overwriting graphics or diagrams or pictures like this. One of the other things it does is that, I'll close this, is it does have a couple of other ways of managing text. So if you had a handout or something like that that you wanted to scan in, you can work it that way. If you have a PDF, and I've just scanned in that original page, so this is a PDF of that document, Gallipoli document, so it's got multi-columns, and what you do with this is, say this was 1, 10 or hundreds of pages, OpenBook comes with a facility which is called Freedom Import Printer, and that looks like a printer to the system. If you go to printers and in the operating system, it appears as a straightforward printer, and you can print anything to it. So in this case it's a PDF, but it might also be a web page, a PowerPoint, any book or anything that comes in a presentation manager that you can't get access to. If you can print it, what you do is you select the Freedom Import Printer, as I'm doing now, to print to, and then you just print your document to the Freedom Import printer. The Freedom Import printer simply takes the image and gives it to OpenBook, much the same as the process as the camera would do, taking a photograph of the image and giving it to OpenBook. It automatically pulls OpenBook up and analyses the text on that page. The maximum I've done is, I think it was just over 300 pages. It was a PDF book, and I just let it go, and it just literally cranked through the 300 pages, removed all the text from that. You can, if you want to, once you've got the text out of a document, you might want to, you could simply cut and paste that into an email and send it directly to the student or whoever's involved. When it's in OpenBook like this, I can save to audio. So I might save this as an MP3 file. So I've got Windows Wave file and an MP3. And I could save the voice of reading out this document as an MP3 and email that somewhere. So that's an option, for example, for a senior student. If they wanted to listen to this document, I don't know, on their phone as they travelled home or something, this would be an option. It has a similar drawbacks to a lot of other MP3s. If it was an enormous MP3 tracking where you pause and where you go back, but if you could save it as either pages or chapters, it can be very useful. Also with this, I've got all the usual tools just to cover that. So I can spell check this document. It has a very friendly talking spell checker. I can spell words phonetically, all the usual. I have a dictionary, thesaurus, and also if I wanted to, there's a low vision option, and in which case I can just, by going up and down arrow, I can adjust the text to any particular format that I like: text size, background, foreground colour. I can also, sometimes it's quite handy being able to put extra spacing into lines and possibly even restrict how wide the document is. So I can do this through this low vision settings panel. One thing that's worth looking at, under settings, I have a great deal of control over this program in terms of how it appears, the speech settings. It does, there's the voices I have, Sapify voices. There's quite a large arrangement of voices. You can adjust the speed and so on. There's quite complex stuff like even pausing at the end of sentences. The best one though, and one most people find works for them, is the actually way it processes your workload. So it's called a workflow, and at the moment I'm simply on acquire and read. So I scan something in, I put it under the Pearl camera, I print it, and it simply processes that document and starts reading it out. But what if I'm a student and I've got 10 pages to scan in? What I can do is I can do acquire in background, and what that means is I can scan in page 1 and I can be sitting here listening to page 1, but then in the background I can scan in page 2, 3, 4, 5 and keep going with that. While I'm studying grade 1, and it will move on to page 1, I can move on to page 2, and it will then simply process pages in the background. You can do things like if you had a book and it took 2 hands to basically hold the book in the right position, you can say take a photo every 5 seconds or every 10 seconds or something, and that means I could manipulate the book when it's right. It would simply go click and process that page and basically assemble a book. There's just enormous numbers of things. If I'm in this inquire and read, I can then also work out what I want to do with this document, how I want it actually presented, as if I want each page as a separate electronic page or whether I want it as one entire document. The other one is that it does an enormous number of languages. I don't actually know how many it does, but you might be able to see on the screen there's enormous numbers of languages that it does. The way it works is it has a primary language, so it'll look at this and go, okay, what is this in front of me? It's got English Australian, and you have a secondary language, which means that if it's not English, it will then, you can say, well, it's probably this, and it will then start processing in that secondary language. There's a great many controls about how it reacts when you do things, whether you want speech, whether you don't, whether you just, if it has any OCR corrections that it needs to make, you can actually make adjustments, and you can actually have it mark, if it's uncertain about text, you can actually have it put an asterisk or some other character there to indicate that it might well be right, but this would be worth checking.
Mm-hmm.
So this here is just all the usuals. It talks about speech setting, general settings, but also visual settings. What colour is the background? What colour is the highlighting? Is it a block around the word? Is it a different colour of word? And that's to focus your vision on that particular point, and also whether it's where it's matched with the voice. I can, all the usual things, I can have multiple documents. It also has a method of correcting directly to note takers for Braille displays, and you can actually emboss directly from this, but I'm still looking into whether it has UEB as one of the options, but it does actually have a translator and embosser with OpenBook itself.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I can do with this, which it has launchables, and this is something that needs to be set up. Like if you simply install the program, switch it on, and it won't have any of these options here. What you've got to do is select Set Up Standard Launchables, third from the top, and it will hunt through your PC and work out documents that, or work out processes, Duxbury, Word, Notepad, so on, that it is aware of and can talk to. When you do that, if I were to simply select here Word, press Enter, it will now go and start Word and drop all of this text that we've scanned into Word. So if I've got a preference of wanting to, if I use, for example, I'm very familiar with Word and I want to do that for all my word processing, spell checking, all those sorts of processes, then here's that text, it just drops it into Word. If I want, if I was using JAWS or Zoom text in Word, then this is a very easy way of handling it and a very quick way of getting my information from print, for example, into Word very, very effectively. Same deal, I can cut and paste this. There is also a free application if you've got Duxbury. Duxbury have just released an application that works with Word called Swift, and it allows you to select material. So if you had like 20 pages here but you didn't want to Braille all of it, you just want to Braille sections or chunks, you can mark them, and Swift will then take all of those sections and input them directly into Duxbury. For our purposes at the moment, I'll simply grab this, Control R or A for all, C for copy, into Duxbury and view it here. So that was that information dropped into Duxbury. Control P for translate and Control E, and I could send that off to an embosser. Is there any questions? I'm interested in any of that.
Okay, we've had a couple of questions, Trevor, but I'll also unmute people so they can ask questions. we've had a question about, will OpenBook recognise algebra?
Okay, the way all the OCR programs work effectively is if it's on the keyboard, it'll recognise it. So if your symbol's on the keyboard, it's pretty much going to be right. I actually did a little test a couple of days ago where I did all of the symbols, and OpenBook just correctly analysed each one. So if it's complex algebra with long division signs, integral, those sorts of things, then no, OpenBook's not going to do that.
And also about using it with Braille displays, but I'd say yeah, you can use OpenBook with a Braille display, and you can input as well. I don't think there's limitations on that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. OpenBook, it's just a matter of setting it up. Basically setting up the Braille displays to basically work out whether you want grade or uncontracted or contracted Braille displayed, or how you want that to happen. If it's got indicators, how you want the, or how the indicators work. So you've got quite a lot of control over those Braille displays.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I'd just like to know if I support a lot of schools out there who use this sort of setup. OpenBook, you get 3 installs with OpenBook, so you can have one set up for support staff so that they can scan material in, but you can also have one on the, if it's workable, if it's a solution, you can also put it on a laptop or something that the student uses. You don't actually need the Pearl scanner plugged in to use OpenBook, as I mentioned earlier. You can use a flatbed scanner if they have something like that at home. And also I know a lot of staff go to the photocopier with a USB memory stick. They just scan a lot of material in, save it as a PDF document, and then just feed it into the Freedom Import printer. It's a very quick way of just analysing the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a quick aside here, in terms of, so the focus here is basically very effectively converting my text. If you want to do Braille graphics, that's really a whole other topic. There's a lot of options around now. There's been a program for which I'd recommend, which is called Picture Braille, and that's an excellent program, and that converts my images into a graphic image that I can then emboss out. What have I got here? There's a I was looking it up just beforehand, so that just as an example of a free program with enabling technologies, they have some free software that comes with their embossers, which is called Firebird, and there's examples on the screen how it takes a graph and then produces a tactile image of that graph that you can emboss out. So the advantage of that is that basically if you've got your graph which is roughly the right size to emboss it out and get reasonable resolution, then that's the solution. It can be also done with things like paint and things like this. If you've got a PF or some other tactile image processing method, the advantage of the PF and that size of heat-sensitive paper is that you can get very high quality graphs. Probably the disadvantage is that it's slightly more expensive paper. With the graphics paper, it's the cost of a Braille page, so it's pretty cheap, but you've got to have the Braille image of the correct size so that it's clearly discernible. You can actually make out what it means. But that's an example. There's a lot of other, I know Index also have programs available for their embossers that may well be useful, and there are quite a lot of programs if you do a bit of a hunt on the web in terms of graphics and support software for particular embossers. generally they're embosser selective, so that you'll probably find that your Firebird graphics will only work on enabling technologies embossers. The Duxbury program, I think the biggest issue with Duxbury, I get, which is interesting because I actually had a call today about this, and that is about simply setting up the embossers for to work. The way it works is, the way they work it is under global, you have embossers set up. So when it first arrives and it's installed, it needs to be activated. What happens with both OpenBook and a whole range of software these days is it comes with a serial number, some sort of authorization code for it, which is unique to that particular installation. It needs direct access to the internet, so you feed in your number. It then contacts whoever manufactured the software, anything from Freedom Scientific to AI Squared to Duxbury. It then lodges a request with them for an activation code, one sent back immediately via the web, and it activates. And that seems to be pretty standard these days. That can be an issue behind education and other firewalls, so it can't set up that link, and so that doesn't happen. There's lots of ways around that. IT guys can often give temporary direct access to the internet. The whole process takes maybe 20-30 seconds max. If not, you can also do it via a web page registration process where if you can get access to the web, you log on to Duxbury or you log on to Freedom Scientific, you can type in some more cut and paste basically relevant information and you can activate your programs. Back to embossers, when you get this, when it arrives, it'll simply have no target embosser there and you've got to tell it which one to install. You say new, and up comes this new panel with all of the embossers that it knows about. Again, huge numbers of embossers here. Typically it's been enabling or Mountbatten, different states go on different embossers. The typical one here would be, say, enabling Romeo Pro 50, something like that. And what happens is when you select something like this, then Duxbury knows how to talk to that particular embosser, how to format the page, what are the control codes to make it work properly. And so when you select that and set it up, it knows how to do that. You then, one of the things that comes up is when you plug your embosser in, most embossers are UEB these days, and so it'll come up with a, in printers and settings, it'll come up with just like an indicator. US commonly with an embosser, it doesn't have a driver, so it'll just come up as USB, like 0001 or something, and you have to set it up with a generic text-only printer driver. It's not a terribly hard process, and once you've done this and you name that generic text-only driver, you can just name it enabling Pro 50, you can name it anything like embosser, whatever, and you match that to these embosser setup with send to printer, and here you pick whatever you call that embosser or that generic text-only printer driver. So you could, for example, if it was here it's set up as an Mountbatten, so long as you set that to the embosser, then you can OK that, and then the next setup is the print paper size. So you can have 11.5 by 11 Braille paper size. I think it's amazing. The number of people who call up these days are basically not using Braille paper but something generally lighter, so it'll be instead of 180 GSM, it might be about half that, or say 120, and often it's A4 size. So this is characters per line. Typically in an A4, 32 is maximum, but I want a little bit of gap left and right margin, so I might make that 29. Lines per page, I might have a top margin of 1 there, so I get my blank line at the top. And I don't want to emboss into point. So I'll set this page size up in terms of my actual Braille. If you want help to set that up, you can either give me a call, as the school did this morning, or under Help Topics, under Embossers and Embossing, this is Help in Duxbury. There's quite extensive help in Duxbury. It's got here, so I've simply gone Help, Embossers and Embossing, USB and Embossers, and here's an explanation on how to set that up with the generic text-only printer driver. So basically, here's my, when you plug it in, and it only appears when you actually physically have the embosser plugged in, ready to go. Commonly, many of them appear as simply, if you unplug it, it disappears. If you plug it in, it appears, so it's very easy to check that that's the right one. It comes up as USB 001 virtual printer port, and there's our, it says, okay, let's install some printer software, generic text only, and basically when you set it up, well, this is actually has an example of a Romeo Pro 50. When you set it up, you simply point the generic text only driver at that particular USB port. It's, again, it's not a long process, and then once you've done that, you can name it whatever, and they've actually done this just as named as Romeo Pro 50. If you have any questions on this, I'm happy to go through this with people, or several times I've just logged onto people's computers and set it up for them, so that's easy to do. But that's one of the biggest issues. It's simply setting up, getting the right setup for the particular embosser. The other thing with Duxbury to remember, and you could go through a lot of features of Duxbury. For example, it's got a lot of information, including tables, for example, that you can set up a table, you can do the number of rows and columns, and it's a bit like Word, it just adjusts columns to fit whatever it is you type in. There's really extensive features of Duxbury. One thing to remember is Duxbury, when you activate it, if you're moving computers, so somebody comes along and says we're moving schools or moving where there's a new computer we're supplying, in the same way that you activated Duxbury, it's much better to deactivate Duxbury. And what that does is simply copy the license back to Duxbury, because I only give you a couple. If the computer falls over, blows up, gets re-imaged and people weren't aware of it, then it's a little bit longer process to have that reinstated through Duxbury. But the easiest way by far is to simply deactivate Duxbury. It means you can install it on another PC and reactivate it. And that's by far an easier way to go. Unfortunately, though, you have to then go through the process of setting up the embosser and the printer. The other thing to remember is that if I make a change in the global settings of the embosser setup, that affects every file from this point on. So if I did a file last week, when I open that file, it's going to import the old embosser settings with it. So just be aware if in that case, I've got to go to Document and Embosser Setup and go through a similar process of selecting which embosser I want and setting that up that way. Another one with Duxbury is that in Braille mode, like it is at the moment, so I can, although this is a Braille file, if you can see on your screen, down the very bottom of the screen, there's a yellow highlighted line that actually gives me a back-translated version of the Braille that the cursor is resting on. So as I go down the page, it simply Now what I can do here is that I can actually edit this document in Braille, so I can simply reformat it. I can also, if I can remember, do my SDF-JKL keys. You can Braille, so if you've got a bulk of it is text, but you need to put in algebra, you need to put in Braille maths, you need to reformat this to some other code, you want to format an address, you want to do or tabulate a table that was scanned in, do all those sorts of things. This is a Braille word processor. So if the operator is familiar with grade 2 Braille, whatever, then they can actually directly enter in the text here. So word processor. That allows me to basically, if I need to, I can enter all my text in Braille, but the advantage is if I make it blue, I can go back and correct it or reformat it or cut and paste, do all the usual word processing activities. Are there any other questions on Duxbury?
Yeah, I've just unmuted everybody, so feel free to ask questions. No?
I'm also, yep, go on. I'm also interested in people's experiences with Braille embossers, if positive or negative. If people have been using systems or if they've had embossers for quite a while, I'd be interested in how they've found embossers, whether they've lasted a while, whether they've had any trouble. I've had some embossers that I've placed in schools, I think the record's about 15 years ago now. They were early enabling technologies embossers. I think you'll generally find with embossers they'll probably need some sort of cleaning, servicing, something every 3 to 5 years. It depends very much on how much you use them. We've also supported the embossers that are used by the main Braille producers here in Victoria. So I've had some experience with those as well. I'd also like to offer, if anybody has any particular questions or they have any particular setups they'd like to discuss, I'm happy to stay on a little bit later just to see or talk to people if that's of interest to us as well.
Okay.
So,
okay, we've just
also if anybody, yeah.
Sorry, we just had one comment. Our Index Basic D is still going strong after 8 years of heavy use, although it might need a clean.
That's excellent. The Index are very solid embossers. They've been making them a long time. The Basic Ds are terrific embossers. Tractor feed. I prefer, I suppose, just old school, I prefer the tractor feed embossers. You just stick a box of 1,000 pages at the end of them and they tend to just grind on through very well.
Yep.
The cut sheet feed embossers, especially the Index, are excellent. They are very good and they're used mainly by the Braille production centres here. But no, Index is tops.
Yeah. Good. Okay, well, if that's it, I might just take things back. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, Trevor?
No, that's about all. I'm happy if people are interested. I can run through just a quick run through the process again. But if people are happy with that, that's terrific.
Yep, no, that's great. Okay, well, I'll just take back the presentership.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we do sort of, distributors for a few different embossers here, so if people are needing them. So the Index range we can get, and the range of embossers from Enabling Technologies, and also we obviously do the Mountbatten as we used to make it. So that, but otherwise, thank you to everyone for attending today. And if you've got further questions you think of later, or have any feedback about the webinars, or want a demonstration of the Pearl, that things like OpenBook and Duxbury are available as trial versions. So if you need to have a play around with it, then by all means contact us. So yeah, either by phone or 1300 883 853 or by email, and we'd be happy to talk to you.